everyone else for the benefit.
Oh, wait, what? This is one of the things I said a long time ago when I talked about how like Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson are probably the two biggest like cult daddies on the right, is because people on the left say we don't talk to men, we don't talk to white people, we hate these people. So I mean, like, naturally people are going to gravitate more to other things, so now we're probably starting to see like the results of that. As much as they make fun of it, they've like created like a safe space to do gender studies for men. Like that's essentially what a lot of these spaces are, is that like you can come in here and you can have grievances about like women and how hard it is to be a boy, and we're going to just talk about things with like no judgment and make you feel like empowered and cool and all of that. On the left, when you go over there, it's like, well, you're a man, you've had all the power, you're white, you've enslaved people, kill yourself, fuck you. Shapiro having Destiny's exact take on tariffs.
There is no correlation between trade deficit with a particular country and that country doing better than we are.
Oh, nice. 6 years ago. Oh, so this was when Trump was in office. I don't know what. Okay, let's see what he says.
That's just not the way any of this works.
True.
But the Trump administration is not doing this for economic reasons. They're doing it for cultural reasons. So here, let me
True.
explain why they're doing this for cultural reasons. Again, there's a picture. Okay, politics is about pictures. Politics is about stories. Politics is about narratives. So when I say trade deficit doesn't matter, it's true, but Trump is telling a different story. And the story that President Trump is telling is a story that goes something like this. Once upon a time, there were booming industries in the United States, large-scale factories, these big buildings located in Detroit, where people worked on employment lines, where they worked on manufacturing lines, and they worked there for 50 years, and they got the gold rush, and then they went home. And they had enough money based on that one salary to support their families. Why can't we go back to something like that? And the answer
This never happened. This was never the case. This was never true.
is because America's economy is much more developed. You have better stuff now.
And that's true. We do last stage manufacturing more. Like we do more productive labor. We're not just making widgets. We're making cars built out of widgets.
Cheaper stuff now. The businesses that we work in are better to work in than those businesses. If you had a choice between working in a Pittsburgh smelter and working in the Pittsburgh healthcare industry, you would choose to work in the Pittsburgh healthcare industry.
Yes.
Pittsburgh, by the way, is doing quite well.
Yes.
Right? The Pittsburgh unemployment statistic right now, the Pittsburgh unemployment rate currently is 4.6% as of September 2017. And that is lower than Pennsylvania as a whole. It's lower than Philadelphia at 6.0%. That's because Pittsburgh has totally shifted how it works. Pittsburgh has become one of the more beautiful cities in the Union. Pittsburgh is clean now. It is a service industry. It is a healthcare industry-driven city. But Trump doesn't like that. He wants to go back to the pictures from The Deer Hunter, where you've got Christopher Walken working in giant gloves. Or he wants to go back to the pictures from Breaking Away, where you've got the father working in
I hate him even more. So he does know all this. He's not a moron. That Harvard education did actually pay. He learned something.
in a quarry. And that's what Trump thinks industry looks like. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Iran, by the way, has a trade surplus.
It's a child's view of manufacturing. Like manufacturing is when the guys come from the coal mines with the dirty gloves and they hit with the hammer things on an anvil and they make swords for like war. Like that's manufacturing.
Iran is number 15 in the world in trade surplus. Is their economy something that you like? Something that you think makes any sense? Here are the countries with the largest trade.
Oh, and he's pointing out, yeah, trade surpluses don't matter. Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. Iran, by the way, has a trade surplus. Iran is number 15 in the world in trade surplus. Is their economy something that you'd like? Is that something that you think makes any sense? Here are the countries with the largest trade deficits, by contrast. The three largest trade deficits in the world: United States, UK, Canada. Do those economies sound pretty good to you? Because they are pretty good. And India is a growing economy. They have a trade deficit. France has a pretty significant trade deficit. Australia has a significant trade deficit. Again, no correlation between having a trade deficit and having a poor economy. But again, it's not about that. It's about Trump thinking he's going to win politically because he promised a bunch of people in manufacturing industries he's going to bring their jobs back. I said at the time that's a lie. Those jobs aren't coming back. Those jobs left because of technology. They did not leave because of global competition.
True.
And certainly are not going to be protected by killing jobs in other industries. Because all a surplus is, all a tariff is a tax that is being placed on everyone else for the benefit.
Oh, wait, what? Wait, hold on. We need to look for what has he said recently about tariffs. Somebody find me a 2024, 2023 statement about Ben Shapiro on tariffs. I'm so curious if he's changed his tune on this.
The word tax.
Oh my God.
At the time, that's a lie. Those jobs aren't coming back. Those jobs left because of technology. They did not leave because of global competition, and they certainly are not going to be protected by killing jobs in other industries. Because all a surplus is, all a tariff is a tax that is being placed on everyone else for the benefit of some. So if you
that's true. It almost sounds like I ripped my talking points from him. When people are trying to protect certain jobs, people will say we need to protect jobs, and they'll help a few people whose jobs are being protected, but then everybody else in the economy suffers because we all have to pay more money for this.
For example, the ethanol industry. The ethanol industry needs to be subsidized by the federal government. I don't think so. I think that it's nasty to tax me to pay off a bunch of farmers in Iowa. Like, I don't see why that's useful.
I wonder.
The anti-farmer arc from Ben
I'm so
Shapiro.
curious what he said recently about.
There are still like 15, 20, 30% tariffs on like European goods that were put in place in like the 50s and shit. Because another thing about tariffs is they're really hard to reverse. Like once the economies adjust and there's often like fucking retaliatory measures put in place and then they have to negotiate, they just stay for fucking ever. So, wow.
Okay, Shapiro was anti-tariff in July.
Uh-huh.
He acknowledges it's insane. Oh wait, this is a week on my
He's going to say that he won't do all of them.
0% income tax has been thrown around recently. Do you think that's even possible?
I think very, very implausible. I mean, dream of dreams, hope of hopes. I mean, like when Trump was talking about his 20% tariff plan or 10% tariff plan, like, but then when he's like, instead of the income tax, like,
But why even throw some of these things out there? Because it seems like a lot of politicians are throwing out these wild pipe dreams, and they're just saying whatever.
Well,
how ridiculous!
Again, I think that's a great way to please everybody, right? You're saying I'm going to throw out tariff plans, and that's going to bring manufacturing jobs back to the bereft Midwest, the Rust Belt. And then he's like,
I feel like I already know it. He's just going to say, he just says this, but he's not going to do any of it. That's my guess. But let's see.
I just said, but okay, go on.
but that also is going to increase
Wait, for what?
I just said he was going to say that.
Oh, okay.
prices by 20. What if I said instead of the income tax? And it's like, okay, well, then I can have all the things. Like, again, the truth is that is, and there's solid precedent for that in American history. Before the income tax, that is actually how the federal government generated its income, was tariffing imported goods, and then...
Okay, so now...
Wait, what did he say?
He said there's precedent for having tariffs funding everything and not having an income tax. So now he's not saying Trump won't do it. Now it sounds like he is kind of sort of supporting the...
What's the precedent? Did that last happen?
Before, I don't know, in the 1800s.
Actually, how the federal government generated its income was tariffing imported goods, and then there was no income tax. And I'd venture to say that was probably a better system. Tariffs plus a gigantic income tax is a pretty terrible economic system, actually. But yes, I mean, everyone throws out these plans. None of them will ever come to fruition. Similarly, Kamala Harris suggesting that she's going to tax unrealized capital gains is psychotic. Maybe it sounds good to her sort of Bernie Sanders, Thomas Piketty base.
I don't think it sounds good to a lot of people.
Well, anybody who has any basic knowledge of how businesses run,
valuations,
understands like that's it's psychotic. I mean, it's not like when I say full scale asylum level psychotic to suggest that as a serious.
So this is purely people throwing out random things just to appeal to people.
Right.
But it means something to the American people. That's the problem that I have with it, is because we have a list right here of like the 0% income tax. We have the wall that was talked about forever, and obviously some of it was built, but now we obviously have the huge immigration problem. We have homelessness, which people are talking about, but nothing is ever done. Actually, today, Gavin Newsom did something. He put, what, 870 million towards homelessness, so hopefully we'll have one shelter in 30 years.
Yeah, after spending $24 billion on homelessness and totally failing.
And the wealth tax was an interesting one, too. Student loan cancellation, which is always talked about, it's never passed. The federal minimum wage of $7.25.
Again, these are such that the prices in the United States to consumers rise. That is the natural effect of a tariff. There's no way around that. Whether that leads to the kind of inflation that Kamala Harris is talking about, that she's created with loose fiscal policy, blowing trillions of dollars into the economy, if the definition of inflation is too many dollars following too little product, tariffs create too little product by limiting competition. As a general rule, this is not totally anti-tariff. Some tariffs are necessary for security purposes, but what tariffs do is they limit the availability of product with the same number of dollars. That will have some inflationary effect. Will it have a massive inflationary effect? Probably not. It'll have some, but not massive. You know what has a massive inflationary effect? Spending trillions and trillions and...
Okay. So now he's like way softer on it. Okay. Okay, what do we...
I would feel bad for him if it wasn't just so shameless.
Yeah. Oh, here's Trump.
I wonder if there was a really old video of Blair White doing a political compass test, but... if you actually filled out the test the way she did it, she would have gone somewhere like center left or just center. But she got a separate result, and there's like a clip in the video where you can see like a right wing result. So she did the thing, got a left wing result, and then just cuts the video and then puts in a fucking picture of the political compass result that puts her on the right. I sometimes wonder if like Ben Shapiro actually ideologically would align more with like a moderate Republican, or maybe even towards Harris than Trump. I don't know.
What do you mean?
Because...
oh, wait, I'm sorry. I heard what you said. I don't know why I just said
or,
what you mean.
Or
wait, so you're saying that he did the test, and if you would have actually put in the answers, it would have come out differently, so he just like...
I was talking about Blair White doing that.
Or Blair White, okay.
It just makes me wonder like where Ben Shapiro actually would be if there wasn't that incentive to keep the audience happy. Like, I imagine he would probably just be more like in the sort of establishment Republican area, right? Like, just trying to oppose Trump from within. I don't think everything he believes about the economy and immigration and everything else should really make him a pro-Trump person.
For Ben Shapiro?
Yeah.
No, yeah, Ben is... when I talked to him in person, I think he even said that like I like institutions and stuff like that. On a values level, he's not at all. Mm-hmm. But it goes back to the thing that I said before about our different media spheres, and that the right has to have a heterogeneous opinion on supporting the candidate. Like, it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter who you have to support the party. They will always support the party. Mm. And then on the left, we don't do that at all.
Who supports Bernie Sanders anymore?
I don't know about support. I mean, like all the big left, like alt-left media figures.
But they shouldn't. Not really.
What do you mean by support? Like, do you mean that, they want him to be president? They want him to go for presidency again? Or what do you mean by support exactly?
Like, I feel like the way that the standards that people like Hassan and that whole gang have put up for just from the single issue, just on Gaza, or even on voting for the Democrats, like, I feel like Bernie should be a traitor to them or a sellout, but I guess they just like him because he reminds them of 2020, or I don't know. I think Bernie Sanders is like, it's one of those other things where he can attract really, really, really crazy far left people, even though he's not quite that himself. But I guess if you just have the right rhetoric, I guess people will superimpose all the other stuff onto you, even if it's not there.
I think most people on the left still like Bernie, unless if you're like one of those, what is it? The upside down red triangle people. Internally online, don't look at that stuff. It makes you want to kill yourself in a video game.
Does that mic work?
Yeah.
Am I just not speaking loud enough?
Very quiet. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Here. I'll
shows
speak
up
louder.
your chair up too, so you're actually like in the shot and not a mile away from the table. But or not, you know. It's not like it's which is a stream, so who cares? Do what you want.
Stream.
We never got to it. I know you want to talk about the thing as well, but I wanted to ask, what's the Twitch drama like going forward?
I don't know. That's Dan's crusade. I don't care. I think they should all be banned. I hope the company shuts down, but I don't care. I'm not like super invested in the outcomes for any of that.
You're just gonna watch the videos when they show up.
Which videos?
I guess whenever Dan or like Ethan does one, like that shitting on the sun again.
Oh, stuff like that? Yeah, I'll always, yeah. I think these figures need to be destroyed, or at least they need to be like jettisoned from the Democratic Party and any association with them.
I think Mike from PA is banned the last 3 days.
Do you think so? Yeah. Oh, I thought it was 1, so we'll see. Maybe it'll be 3. It is kind of crazy. I don't know how you can ban somebody like that for 3 days. That seems like it would either be a perma or not at all. Because it's either like, was it a legitimate death threat? If so, how do you not just ban somebody like that? And then if it wasn't, then why would you ban them at all? That was like when did you ever see my clip where I threatened to kill Mr. Mooten's entire family?
No.
Really?
No, I haven't seen that.
I won't make you watch it all, but basically,
it took me quite a few years before I figured out who Mr. Moon even was. I just thought he was like a concept.
There's some clip where I'm just like, Don't
ever clap for any of these players. Ever. Not even one of them. If you clap again,
I'm out. I'm out of it.
I'm gonna find your fucking house. I'm gonna go there, and I'm gonna kill your fucking mom. That's what I'm gonna do. You know why I'm gonna kill your mom, Mr. Mooten? Because I want to kill as much of your family as possible. And after killing your mom, I'm gonna go to the funeral and I'm gonna it. All right? That's what I'm gonna do to you, Mr. Mooten.
I hate League of Legends, okay?
Alright.
But you know what? On the funeral, it's not gonna be like a big explosion. It's gonna be like a nail bomb. So they all go to the hospital, and then you know what? When your family's family is visiting your family's family in the hospital, I'm gonna blow the hospital up. That's what I'm gonna do.
So I gotta.
As much damage on your bloodline as possible.
I got a 7-day ban for this, for making threats, right? I have no idea how I got, like, this is one of those things where it's like, I feel like you would either perma-ban me because you think I'm legitimately threatening to kill his family, or you wouldn't ban me. Like, why would you 7-day ban somebody? Like, what is the 7-day ban for? Like, it can't possibly be a legitimate death threat.
Do you think they've just been scuffed for a while, Twitch TOS?
I don't know, they're just fucking retarded.
I think it's more of a please don't do this again ban. We don't like those jokes.
I guess, maybe.
But they were trying to call you a pedo yesterday.
So, some kids are really hot.
They dug in deep.
Oh.
It happened in the same day that I was getting accused of wanting to kill babies, like wanting to snipe them or whatever. Fucking Israel.
Some babies are really annoying.
But it's like, how is it that we're both aligned then? If like you want to rape the kids and I want to kill them.
I'm a necrophiliac pedophile.
That's the holy fucking sentence.
After you kill them, I have my way with them.
Jesus.
We could have had a better response there. We could have said it's incompatible. Like, how can I be killing them?
Okay, or that.
Oh well. Okay.
Okay. I want to talk about how cooked we are. Or let me phrase it this way. I've been thinking a lot these past few days.
I'm so sorry. Real quick, if you link anything from the degenerate unshowered dude, you're like permaban in chat. Don't ever link any of his material. That guy is absolutely fucking insane. The only thing I ever want to see is an obituary post. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, now I'm curious about what this guy does.
Banat Banata is a guy who he literally doxes people, tries to get people killed online. Like I'm not joking. He's an insanely unhinged, crazy person. One of the craziest people online. There should be absolutely no attention given in response or anything else. Like that guy is insane. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say I feel very doomerish since the election. I specifically am very worried about essentially like young men who are getting more and more radicalized. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about how Republicans basically have pipelines to all sorts of things. MMA, crypto, crunchy granola mom. There's probably more pipelines that we don't even know of. And I kind of wanted to get your opinion on what pipelines the left can build, if they can build any. Is it worth going into like these industries that are already kind of taken over by Republicans and trying to take them over through like a leftist way? I don't even know if that's possible. Like, I don't know. I just know it's not enough to just talk only politics without trying to get into like more mainstream narrative or conversation or a hobby or something, because I don't know how else you combat against these pipelines.
I mean, I think it was already starting to happen a bit. I think that like the woke scolding over everything, I think really hurts. I think the perception of like leftists or progressives or liberals being like super like fun-sucking losers is bad. And then like the constant demonization, especially of like white people and of men, was really cringe. That's why I thought that the white dudes for Harris, I thought that was actually a good idea, like having stuff like that. But I think the left has already kind of moved away, at least from the more extreme positions there. Now the left just needs to get better at incorporating more people into like the entertainment and stuff, and to not come off as just so boring and soy is the big issue.
Yeah, I think the problem this past year when I was like reaching out to like other creators who were kind of interested is that a lot of them think politics is important, but they're scared. They're scared of getting into it because of the hate that happens, of getting a lot of audience backlash. And I don't really know how to convince them to get more into politics, because then it's like, oh, you know, yeah, you're going to get a lot of hate, but who cares? You're doing the right thing. I don't think is really convincing to a lot of people.
I mean, the issue is that people on the left, their form of politics, unfortunately, is it's just virtue signaling on issues that don't support the party or the candidates. That's the issue, right? Like, I'm sure if I go on Twitter, I bet Pokemon's made statements about like the genocide in Gaza or some shit. But like, are these people that are like avowedly supporting? I mean, she might have, because they did that progressive victory deal thing. Although I'm not even sure actually. Like, are these people that are super openly supporting the candidates? It feels like political issues for quote unquote the left is usually just like social issue signaling. I don't even want to say virtue signaling is necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't seem like it plays out as much in terms of supporting the party or the candidates. All of the people on the right are hardcore oriented on political outcomes and supporting the party and supporting Trump. That like it's lockstep uniformity.
Yeah, but I guess, like, do you think it's possible then to build these pipelines if the left is not going to be hardcore, just supporting one candidate essentially?
They can. They just need to have more. It just needs to be a rejection of like these socialist, leftist, super ultra progressive types, and it just needs to be more supporting of like the center left liberal types. And then those people need to grow more, because the far left people are never going to support the party and they're never going to support the candidates. So it's a waste of time to ever invest any money or anything on them. There needs to be more of an investment in the people that are actually supportive of the party.
You don't think it's possible with the right candidate? Do you think it's
no
100%?
No, all those candidates are losers. They all got raped in their elections. Bowman got destroyed. PV should have never supported her. Bernie Sanders underperformed Harris, I think in his own district. No, no, you never ever try to appease these people. Also, because these people will never be appeased because they're not liberals. They don't care. They're authoritarian. They're people on the far left, the Hassan bikers, the socialist, ultra progressive woke types. You can never ever make a concession to them that will make them support the party. It will never happen. How many of them said that they would have been okay, you know, with like Walz as a candidate, and then when he comes in as VP, they're like, oh, that's actually not enough. Or if Harris would have said this, it would have been this, not enough. It's never enough. You never try to. There's just no value whatsoever in appeasing those people. They're not liberals. They're not Democrats. They won't support the party ever. I don't think.
Do you think that there's any people who are? I understand when it comes to like the biggest, I hate the word, influencers or content creators, that they tend to be utmost leftist. But you don't think there's people like center left who are worth trying to galvanize? They
are, but they exist in like, they're kind of in their own little media sphere. I think they do good on certain podcast areas. So like Pod Save America. Yeah. Like these types of people, but they have like zero penetration, it feels like, into the pop culture world.
Yeah. Like
somehow conservatism completely and totally took over all of like the MMA UFC world, maybe a lot through like Joe Rogan and Lex Friedman with like the whole not judo, the BJJ shit, and him being like UFC MMA adjacent. It took over like the whole Tech Valley, crypto, Silicon Valley, whatever that world. They took over the whole like the whole comedian sphere. All of those people are like like all of that.
But that's why, like, it's weird that doesn't happen, because we know that within like celebrity spheres there is a lot of pro-democratic sentiment. Like people like Billie Eilish will come out and endorse the Democrats, but for some reason it just feels completely disconnected from any of the like political narratives. I feel like that was different back in the day, like in the 2000s. If you were into music at all, you were always going to lean left because artists were like openly. Even in the way,
but like even
songs,
the
right?
endorsements,
the endorsements
the endorsements aren't the same. Like endorsements are like no offense to her, but like Taylor Swift coming out and making one statement on like one like Instagram post is a lot different than somebody going on 3.5 hours with Joe Rogan where they both talk about like the best way to give Trump like a double blowjob or something.
But
right?
that's what
Like,
I mean. That it used to be more ingrained because I remember when the Iraq War happened, like all these bands had like songs that were suddenly all against like governments taking us into like wars that we don't want to, or like System of a Down did all that with like they wrote songs about it, or like even Muse did like that. But we don't have that anymore. I don't think that kind of like very clear popular culture like overlap. Like I said, it's very disconnected right now. It is just Taylor Swift making a statement, or Billie Eilish is a 2-minute video every 4 years, and that's it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, are you gonna do TikToks about fucking granola? Like, you have to find your own ones, don't you?
What do you mean granola? Or what's
the granola moms who are? Do you know the crunchy granola moms?
No, what's the crunchy granola moms?
You can tell.
Crunchy granola moms are basically like moms that are all like, oh, you know, I want to eat all natural, all healthy. You know, I want my kids to eat like non-GMO organic food. And they've basically, like, right-wingers have found a way to make a pipeline from that to like anti-vax or to, you know, you should try
it's like
the
all
whole,
encompassing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, it's really frustrating because you start with people who are maybe not like being super controversial or whatever. Or maybe they have one or two kooky beliefs. And then out of nowhere, like this right-wing pipeline just emerges to like further radicalization. Like I've been thinking about the phrase a lot about what they do. And I don't know how the left can combat it. Have you ever heard of like yes and?
Yeah. Like as a conversation technique, or
yeah, like in theater, basically, when people are improving or whatever, the number one rule is like, oh, you're never supposed to say no, you're supposed to say yes and.
Sure.
And I've noticed this, or I think this happens a lot with Republicans, where it's you have these underlying insecurities or beliefs like, oh, I'm not really sure if I should trust the government on this, or, you know, I'm kind of worried about whether the food we eat is healthy, and then they'll go, yes, you should be worried about that. And it's also the immigrants' faults. Or yes, and they're also putting this extra chemical in.
Yeah, so the thing that I talked about yesterday on stream is that, so there's so what you're talking about is there's this like transcendent idea of like the institution or the deep state that it can encompass and incorporate every single possible thing you complain about, right? Maybe tomorrow, maybe conservatives will complain that blue light in monitors is making people gay or something. And like, yeah, that would make sense because the deep state and the corporate, you know, whatever people are trying to poison our kids, like that would all make sense. They would make it make sense. The issue is that the left does this in the kind of like lefto media sphere, but they all do it and then they point at not the candidate. Like when the right does this and they coalesce around all these crazy points, they do it, but then they support the candidate Donald Trump. When the left does it, they'll blame like capitalism or globalism, but then they don't support any candidates, or they support candidates that can't win because they're a super minority of the electorate, even though they're the loudest people online, I think is the issue. Because the left can incorporate all of these same types of criticisms, like you talked about, like, oh, the granola stuff or whatever. Well, the left will do shit like this, like, oh yeah, because large corporations are trying to poison us because of the profit motive. But they'll say that, it's like, okay, cool, so then we're all going to vote for who? And it's like, nobody, the system's broke. Or like some candidate that will never win. It's like, oh, well, fuck us. So the left can coalesce around these transcendent ideas, but they just do it in a way that doesn't support a political party or a candidate that has any chance of winning.
You don't think, because I agree that when it comes to people who are far left, they always do bring it back to like, oh yeah, like the government is some level of evil, big corporations, they're all trying to do this. But I don't know. I think when we look at like moderate, maybe it's because being moderate, I think is like somewhat dead right now. Because when I look at like moderate people on the left, I don't feel like they do that. I feel like they're like, oh, no, you're wrong because of this. While Republicans, the moderate ones, there's honestly no such thing. They're just like, yes, and you should also believe this.
Maybe I don't even know what we mean when we say moderate not right now. And also, there's no like moderate left in the like alt media sphere. I feel like the moderate left or center left voices, like the Pod Save Americas or the David Pakmans, they seem to kind of be in their own little bubble. Yeah. Like they have no pop culture penetration, or at least it doesn't feel like they do.
How do you? I guess 2 questions. How do you get normie people who are somewhat on the left to become more political, I guess, right? Because there's a lot of people that I see right now on Twitter who, I'm going to use just gaming streamers, I'm not going to name anyone specific, who are like now talking about politics, but they didn't want to throughout the past year because they were scared of getting backlash. And they're not even really talking politics, they're just mentioning it in a tweet or two. So it's like, how do you convince those people to like, I guess, be more political?
I mean, not everybody. The nice thing is that because of how conservatives incorporate people into, you have to change what like politics means or what your political positions support. Because for conservatives, you don't have to be more political. It just kind of happens organically when you're talking about the issue that you want.
Yeah.
But with people on the left, when you get political, like one of the problems too is that nobody on the left can even argue or talk about why any of the things that we advocate for are like good. Like every single thing comes off as like a punishment or comes off as like attacking or shitting on somebody, and it feels atrocious, right? Like, I don't know if you've seen my debates recently, but I can make really strong, powerful arguments for taxation. Like the idea that I work a job and I can only do it because, you know, there are other people around me that are sort of like, I can make these arguments really well. Most people talk about taxes like it's something to be suffered through or a punishment, and it's cringe and so stupid. And that applies to like so many different, like, why do we need to have black people here? Because they were enslaved or whatever. And it's like, no, that's so fucking retarded. We need to mobilize and deploy as much of our population as possible because we've got like talent amongst every group of people. I want like the most talented black people building our fucking missiles. I want the most talented women doing our computer programming. Like, this is why deploying all of our resources is the best, rather than having some country where half the women are enslaved, you know, in burqas and can't even contribute to science. Like, there are strong arguments for all these things, but the arguments that people on the even center left make for them, they all come off as like chastisement or things to be suffered through, which I think is like, it also hurts. It makes it like, like, oh God, I got to talk about politics. It's time to like scold my audience into why they should be more accepting of, you know, whatever bullshit, I think.
So you think if we just found a way to make the talking points more fun, and normie people would be more inclined to like.
Yes, I think the soyness of the stuff on the left, and then how much like how scoldy everything comes off is, I think, is super detrimental. Yeah.
Do you think it's worth trying to infiltrate places that have already been taken over by the right wing in the sense of like MMA or crypto or Crunchy Granola Mom?
Sure. I mean, when you say infiltrate, that makes it sound like subtle or whatever, but no, I mean, you just need more people. You gotta support people like me, okay? Or any, like, unironically, I'm trying to think of other examples, but there's really like nobody else. But like for a long time, like people will, like the idea of me work, and I would even unfortunately propagate this. People say like, oh, I can't work with Destiny, he's way too edgy or whatever. Aiden Ross out on a stream and said, Destiny, you're a 40-year-old like 15 times in a row to me, and Donald Trump appeared with him on like a 2-hour stream. There's no problem with that. Like the fact that so many people on the left are petrified of their own to appear with like any slightly controversial figure, and then Donald Trump will literally go and have, you know, dinner with, oh, this is like Hitler von KKK-Einstein or whatever, and it's like, Jesus, like that, it's just, that shit has to, like, the soyness there needs to just stop. But one of the issues too is that there has to be, and everybody's always uncomfortable with this, there has to be a bit of a fan base rebuilding as well. So when you start to rebuild a fan base, or you start to do things, you readjust expectations, you're going to lose some fans, you're going to get some pushback, and I don't think anybody wants to deal with that. Because if they start to be a little bit edgier or a little bit more relatable, then there's going to be people that get mad. You just have to deal with it and tell them to either get the fuck out or adapt, and they will. It'll change. But until you do that, yeah, you literally just have like these self-flagellation, these self-flagellating, hating people that hate themselves and hate America and want to punish everybody with taxes and woke scoldness, and it's like, fuck, nobody fun wants to be a part of that. It's like
And even if you do want to be part of it, like, they'll kick you out. Like, the problem with like the really far left side is that like it's very difficult to stay there, because usually it takes one or two missteps, or not even a misstep, but just a disagreement or like any moment, and then you're kind of like tarnished by that forever. It's the same with like, it's funny how that like someone like ContraPoints build up that reputation for being able to speak to the young men who are being radicalized by the Nazis and shit. But then she gets like chased out of her own side because of like, I can't remember what the fuck it was over. Something about non-binary identities, or
who was this?
ContraPoints.
Oh,
I can't remember but it was nothing. That's what it was. It was nothing that became this massive thing. And obviously people who were potentially being de-radicalized by her, or being like more in tune with like, because she wasn't never like hard left, but she was like soft left stuff.
Yeah.
But they see what happened to her and they're like, well, shit, I don't want that. You know, like, it's much safer on the other side.
I think there is something about having the right talking points. I know you said like, oh, forget like Bernie Sanders, but I think there is something to be said that at least when he ran how many ever years ago, he was polling well with Hispanic people and young men.
Yeah, but Bernie Sanders has been ejected by a lot of the far left. Like, he's not radical enough for them.
Yeah.
over the Israel
okay, so
stuff.
you're saying the problem is
Even Bernie Sanders had good talking points. He had good presentation, good stage presence or whatever. I don't think that I think his policies are probably a bit too far to the left in terms of what the electorate would support, but I don't think he was a failure of a candidate at all. I mean, this is a guy that came out of nowhere, and in 2016, he ran a respectable primary, and he did lose. Like, it's not like that should be completely and totally ignored, but Bernie Sanders is significantly cooler than his fans. Bernie Sanders, like, fans were for the majority face losers, and Bernie Sanders himself was like a lot more chill. Like actually, unironically, Bernie Sanders fans are sometimes like Destiny fans, where I can sit across the table from somebody who I might disagree with, or they might say something that's like kind of politically dumb, but I know that's not like their area, whatever. And I'm like, okay, yeah, cool, whatever. And we'll be friends and we'll be chill. And then DGG will make a Reddit post like, like, I'm already like looking forward to the day where Brian Tyler Cohen, if we start like doing more content, where he says something that is a take that we disagree with, whatever, and then you guys are making 400 million retarded fucking hate threads on it because you would lose your minds because you can't handle any pushback or disagreement at all without going fucking ape shit over it. But yeah, Bernie Sanders, you got to figure that like people like Brianna Joy Gray and shit, like these people came out of like Bernie Sanders camp.
That's so weird.
Yeah, or the fact that there were a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters. Who's the one crazy guy? He looks like RFK's younger brother who doesn't have the voice fuck up. Jimmy Dore. Yeah, like people like this. Like these guys like were massive Bernie fans, Bernie supporters. So what do you do? Like there's an issue there where his fans were insane compared to what he was. And yeah,
the thing is, I can see why your fans would do that. Why they would become like a worse example of you, but like I don't know. I don't know what Bernie Sanders does to make his fans like that. I feel like he sets the best example I've ever seen for someone who's like a socialist. But I guess it's like maybe it's just because of the ideology is like attached to it, so it naturally brings in people who
I don't know why I can't figure out why my fans do it sometimes, because I think I talk to a wider variety of people than probably any other influencer on the internet.
In your case, it's the house fan syndrome. I spoke about this years ago, and it's always been true.
What's
like people who love Dr. House, right? They like him because he's smart and he's a dickhead. He's a cunt. But if you're not you're never going to be as smart as House because he's a fictional character. So the easiest things to emulate about House are being a cunt.
True. That's kind of true. Yeah.
And then,
but I'm not a cunt to everybody.
Yeah, but that's why like you become like the real life, like the imitation of House, and then your fans become an imitation of that. Sure. It's like, because I think the appeal of people like Joe Rogan and all that is like whatever. It's like conspiracy theories or like smoking weed or like MMA and shit. But I guess the thing that you can get, I think, for especially like young male audiences as a center left person, is like the debates and the feeling of like intellectual superiority, like making the opposition feel stupid. I think that's probably the thing is like one of the most seductive things about like this sphere. But obviously if you're a fan of that and you're like, you're going to copy the worst excesses more so than the more difficult to emulate aspects.
Sure. All you can do is ban them. Thank you, Loner. D-Man does it and then bitches at fans when they do it. How can you miss the point? Kill me.
It's always uphill.
Do you think, I've seen these memes online talking about like, oh, somebody said we need the liberal Joe Rogan, and then everybody is like, oh, the liberal Joe Rogan already existed. What do you think about that?
Who was the liberal Joe Rogan?
They're like, the liberal Joe Rogan existed when he interviewed Bernie Sanders.
Oh, when Joe Rogan was, like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I mean, he was more just like populist back then. That was another issue too. Bernie Sanders attracted a lot of fans that were just populists, and weren't necessarily strong liberals. Liberals just liberalism like hasn't been defended well. And now that we don't have neocons anymore, like it's been completely abandoned, at least like in the media sphere.
Do you think there's ever, I guess there has to be, the answer has to be yes, otherwise we're really cooked. But to de-radicalize people that have gone through these pipelines, do you think that's a worthwhile adventure, or do you think it's better to just build completely new pipelines?
I don't know, when we say de-radicalize people, I don't know if we can even think about that anymore, because these are like huge chunks of the population. To call them radical almost seems contradictory, because radical usually implies like smaller sect. Like when you have a population where 50% of the population is radicalized, like I don't know if that even makes sense.
The Nazis weren't radical.
Yeah.
I don't think it's 2024.
I don't think the obsession should be like on like pipelines or whatever else. It just has to be like a slow change in the culture, and it has to be a change from the top down and the bottom up. So top down as in when you have like the party needs to be supporting people that support the party. That's it. It has to like start and stop there. So there has to be like coordination from the top down on that. People who are working, large influencers like people like me, I already do this because I'm a god, but other people need to have zero tolerance for people that are just like completely and totally trash the party. Like that just can't be. These people on the right, they do this exceedingly well. And then from the bottom up, there needs to be way less tolerance for people who aren't supportive of your candidates. The whole right coalesced to bully the fuck out of Kyle Rittenhouse and Joe Rogan when they implied that they weren't. Well, Rittenhouse said he wasn't going to support Trump. He was supporting a libertarian even, right? Who's still ideologically pretty congruent-ish.
For a pretty logical reason.
Yeah, for a pretty logical reason.
Trump did the bump stock ban and obviously Ron
and
Paul
Joe Rogan,
I
don't think Joe Rogan said he was supporting anybody, but he kind of implied sort of that he liked RFK, and people they gathered around him, so much so that other Republican large media people were even saying like, well, I don't know if it's smart to attack Rogan, guys. And then Rogan fell in line. Like the right is so good about enforcing ideological homogeneity between all of their media people.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, left-wingers are good at that as well. They just don't direct people to the party.
Exactly, yeah. The left does this very well, but they don't direct them to candidates. It's just to these online ideologies.
God, if one day I wanted to talk about all the fucking bread tubers that secretly agree with me on certain issues behind the scenes, but they won't
that
talk
shit
about
is so
it.
cringe. Yeah.
I know it's already so early. We have 4 more years to go for 2028. I don't even know how that whole landscape is going to be. But do you think like the Democratic Party is like pretty cooked right now?
No, it's not like the election. We're so strange in the United States. We talk about like landslide elections would be like 51 to 49. And it's like, oh, fucking landslide. It was obliterated. It's like, no, our population is incredibly fucking split right now. It's like on a razor's edge for a lot of this. The idea that it's just it's over 52-48 election, we're completely done. No, it's not completely cooked. I still think that the major driving force for Trump was just all of the cumulative inflation. I think there's an interesting macro argument to be made for maybe inflation needs to be targeted more than unemployment, but that's a different thing. But
yeah, I think I have, I guess, like a couple of biggest fears right now, but we'll see if any of that stuff happens. One of them being Trump not wanting to let go of the presidency once his term is up. I don't know if that's realistic or not. The second one is afterwards, depending on what economic policies he passes, you might not feel the effects of them or the full effects until basically the next presidency. So my worry is that he puts a bunch of economic policy that's like terrible for the nation. We don't feel the full effects of that until whoever becomes president next term. And the person who's president next term happens to be a Democrat. Then it's like, okay, fuck, we have another like 4 years of people improperly like placing the blame for bad economic policy on a Democrat and further reinstating this idea that Republicans are actually good at the economy. Like, what do you do then? Because I don't think people listen.
People just don't know how economics works. That is what should happen. The one lady, I should remember her name. It's so insulting that I don't remember anybody's name, but she was absolutely right. Like if Donald Trump was intelligent, he would do nothing because again, a Democrat has set a conservative up to have an amazing economy. Yeah. The United States is outperforming every other country in the world, basically, economically. We're doing fantastic compared to the rest of the world when it comes to things like inflation. He just got so much major legislation passed that Trump wanted to pass but couldn't. Things like the infrastructure bill, the IRA, like all this shit. Like he's got so much and inflation has come under control. The Fed is starting to reduce rates now. Like if Donald Trump just sits back and does nothing, all of these conservatives who are complaining about prices and everything are all going to be saying like, wow, like Donald Trump saved us. Like that's so amazing. Same thing when Trump came in after Obama and the economy continued to run well.
Brag about how much is getting built.
Probably, yeah. Catherine Rempel, yeah. If unemployment were bad instead, you'd be saying the macro thing about how important unemployment is instead of inflation. No, because the difference is that unemployment can go away and cumulative effects of inflation can't really. Remember, inflation is a derivative. We're talking about a rate of change, whereas unemployment is like the actual static figure itself. The thing is, I think that if you have 10% unemployment and then you go to 5% unemployment, people forget about the unemployment. But if you gain a lot of inflation and then the rate of inflation drops, you still have the cumulative effects of it. I wonder if there's like a long-term negative feeling about that.
Yeah, like
even if it is worse,
0%, the prices are still going to be as high as they were.
People don't understand. But you're literally doing a worse thing for the economy. So,
I think the problem is, or at least the problem I run into is that when you try to explain this to people, they don't want to listen. Like, they don't care what you say. They're basically like, the number is higher, I just want it to be lower, essentially.
I mean, because at the end of the day, like, trying to understand all this shit is really complicated. So, I mean, like, the person doesn't give a fuck. All they know is that at the end of the day, it feels like prices are higher at a certain place, and that's it. It doesn't matter what they're, because anything you say will start to sound like a cope or
out of
some sort of, or out of touch.
Out of touch, wealthy Florida man.
Yeah,
doesn't know the
like
price
that.
of a pint of milk.
Yeah.
What else is there to do? Because then I feel like, okay, then that's it. Then people are just going to vote for their vibe. And I guess
I mean, that's basically it. You got to fight. You got to have the vibe wars. You got to fight for your vibes.
Have to fight for a better vibe. And do you feel like that? Well, I guess I already asked this kind of, because I know you say that people on the left or leftists in general can be better at essentially targeting things onto a candidate, not being like super self-flagellatory, whatever.
Well, they can't because they won't. But I mean, if they would, it would be better. But
do you think the Democratic Party as a whole has failed in their vibe check, essentially, or in spreading the right vibes?
in spreading right vibes, yeah, possibly, yeah, for a variety of reasons. But yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would blame the Democratic Party or just like liberalism as an institution in general, because liberalism has had issues all throughout Europe as well, especially in the wake of the 2013 Syrian refugee stuff. So I mean, the UK literally ejected itself from the European Union. So there's some issues going on. Yeah.
I feel like in the 20th century, a lot of it managed to get by somehow doing this thing where you had like mostly social democrats who were able to consolidate like the support of people who saw themselves as socialists or like revolutionaries, but still the parties would ultimately do things within the system. Like they'd expand welfare, they'd raise taxes, but somehow that worked. I don't know, like, has social democracy ever been a thing that people advocate for, like in the United States, like a social democrat movement? Or...
Probably not, because we've got such an anti-Soviet history and everything, right? I don't like, it's hard. Anything relating to socialism or communism is weird for us. But yeah, I don't know what changed exactly. But like, I don't know if it was a letter or something. But like, I think MLK like even wrote about like, was it called The Power of the Vote, or give us the ballot? It was a speech that he gave. Like those old civil rights people were very, 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 very big on voting. It was incredibly fucking important. Like black people got the right to vote, and then that voting block and fighting for civil rights and everything was like cornerstone of a lot of those movements.
And most of them weren't that extreme. Like the actual active civil rights people, like MLK and that, they were center left. They were like,
sure.
Yeah.
Whether you're extreme or not, I don't even care. You just have to be supporting something with like a realistic political outcome.
Well, that's the thing is like when I used to listen to socialist voices from the 2010s, they were the kind of people who like they would go to their internal like talks and their events and talk about revolutionary socialism and what does it mean to be a revolutionary today. But when they were talking to the mainstream public, they were talking about let's end austerity, or let's like vote in a like left-leaning party, or let's join a union and things like that. So they were able to like keep their like fantasies to one side whilst they were willing to be pragmatic. But I feel
unironically, the Hillary Clinton public-private position is a good take on that. Yeah.
But for some reason that's gone now. It feels like for whatever reason they have taken the private position and just made it the entire thing, and now nothing's good enough for them. I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
You need a populist, charismatic figure for social democracy. I feel like someone like Bernie someone like him can only really do well in opposition, though. Can you imagine if Bernie ran after Biden and then complained about the billionaire class and the policies of how governments are basically geared to support the billionaire class against the people? Like that would sound kind of weird, because he'd be like, well, the party that you support did that for 4 years. Yeah.
Well, I feel like there's a way that I could have done properly, which is basically just redirect all that anger and hate onto like what Trump is trying to do or whatever, right? It's just a constant, it sucks because it feels like so dirty in a way, but I would say like it would have to be like a constant redirection of like, we're trying to make the system better. That's my Bernie voice. It's not very good. We're trying to make the system better. But these billionaires keep trying to get in the way. Like look at, Trump, or like look at even Republicans within Congress who were blocking bills continuously,
The most important thing, one of the nicest things that people do on the right, Brian is right in that like things will also change a lot. Even earlier, Brian, you were saying that like you would support Newsom is best positioned to this point, which might be true, but again, in 4 years, who the knows? Like things change so much in that time period, and who knows what things will look like 4 years from now. But I think that one of the nice things, people say that people vote based on the economy, and that's partially true. People vote based on their perception of the economy. And one of the things that Republicans have done so well since they've divorced themselves from like reality entirely is they're very good at just writing the narrative and telling people like how they feel about things. And then they get the messaging, they receive it, and then they have it. That Shane Gillis, the stand-up that he did in Austin, I think is just like really funny, but it's also like it's very on the point where he's like there's a part in a bit where he's talking about like my dad from Pennsylvania is all of a sudden like really concerned about illegal immigration on the border. Like you think it's like some dude's about to come, like there are Republicans all throughout the US that are super concerned about illegal immigration, even though they've never seen an illegal immigrant in their life. They probably don't feel the effects of any. They don't know if they feel the effects of any. They have no fucking idea, right? Somebody earlier said, Destiny, if we focused on unemployment instead of if we focus on inflation instead of unemployment, people just complain about unemployment. People complain about unemployment now. Unemployment has been low for like 10 years. Save for obviously the COVID stuff. Like our unemployment has been amazing. It's below like natural rate of unemployment. But people still think that we're having an employment problem because of illegal immigrants. So like there's no tie to reality. And again, every single conservative broadcaster, and I'm including all of the centrist people that say they're not but are, all of them coalesce around those talking points. If you were to go on Lex Friedman, on the show that I was on in California with I want to call him Tommy. It's not Tommy. Bill Yu. The Impact Theory, on Joe Rogan, on Ben Shapiro, like every single one of these on Tim Pool, Candace Owens, all of these people, and ask them, are illegal immigrants hurting American jobs right now? All of them would say yes and give you reasons why, even though the data doesn't support that at all, right? Or how many people that I've argued with where like it's just so funny. You can pull the plug on a lot of these like really basic talking points. People, this talking point of like 30,000 murderers or whatever came in illegally, and then you just ask them, hold on, they came in illegally? Yeah. We're not tracking anybody at the border, right? Yeah. How do you know that there were 30,000 people that came in illegally if you're not tracking any of them? Yeah. Because you said you don't do background check, and it's just like they have no answer. Like the answers are obviously nonsense, but they're not even trying. So. Yeah, Republicans are really good at just rewriting reality for people. Look at how many people, like one of my favorite memory holes is Trump saying, weren't you all better off 4 years ago? No, motherfucker. That's why you lost the election, you dumb piece of shit. What do you mean were we better off 4 years ago? We were all locked in our homes with fucking lockdowns and crazy COVID shit going on all over the world and everything. And people were unemployed and it was crazy. You lost the election because of 4 years ago. Why would you say, weren't you better off? That's not true. So that's, yeah, I don't know. Conservatives are insane when it comes to that shit.
Yeah, I guess that's also part of the reason why I've been feeling so doomer, because I feel like people have just completely self-radicalized themselves online, and I don't know how it's possible to even like get them out of it, because the algorithm just keeps feeding into their worst like inhibitions and into their worst fears essentially, and it doesn't matter how many times you show them like, hey, that actually doesn't make sense or that's not congruent with reality, because people will just straight up ignore
because
it.
What you have to keep in mind is people are emotive. They're emoting when they say things. So when somebody says illegal immigrants are hurting, when somebody says to you, illegal immigrants are hurting our job market, what they're probably emoting is something like, there was something I wanted to buy or a home I wanted to move into or something, or rent is getting higher. That's what they're meaning, but they're emoting that. So if they're emoting something, okay, they're saying something along the lines of like, illegal immigrants are stealing our jobs, and you try to put a fact-based argument against it, despite the facts you put out, you're never going to debate them out of the position because they're not actually arguing that. They're emoting something about like the rent being too high, or they're emoting something about a job they lost, or they're emoting something about something else happening. So when you're arguing against that, to them, the feeling is you're telling them that their lived reality is wrong, or at least the perception of their lived reality, so it doesn't work. That's why these arguments are like a waste of time.
Yeah. But then it's like, okay, how do you get them out of that emotive stand? Okay, how do you essentially like shift how they're currently feeling, so that they don't. You have
to engage in like the narrative war, and you have to have people online who do it. But the popular people on the left are people that don't support the party or the candidate, and they agree with the Trumples on a lot of the narrative war. Like this guy in chat thinks he's making a point. They'll say this out of touch thing all the time while you support potentially a child rapist billionaire along with his billionaire friend, two of the wealthiest people in the world. Okay, you're calling me out of touch. That's funny. When you explain to liberals that from 2021 to 2024 a home price jumped from $350K to $600K, you get the conservative bootstrap talk. You can't relate to being so poor. 2 bags of groceries is $70. Like, I'm sorry, but like that talking point got obliterated in 4K in 60 FPS on Jubilee when I was talking to that dipshit woman that said that her groceries were too expensive for her 2 children and she couldn't afford to feed them. And I said, what about the $6,000 expanded tax credit? $500 a month? And she's like, that wouldn't even help. That's not true. You're lying. You're lying. You're fucking lying. You're fucking lying. I'm sorry. You're just lying. I don't believe it until I start seeing like downstream impacts. I've said this a million times. There should be indicators if like food is getting so unbelievably expensive, where like Uber Eats and DoorDash are like shutting down as businesses instead of thriving as much of or more than they ever have. Like that's just not a real argument. You're saying that because you're emoting something else, probably some bullshit that a conservative programmed you with for you to have that feeling.
Out of interest, what's the numbers on Uber Eats and DoorDash right now? Like, how are they doing in terms of growth? Do they have like a stocks chart that you can look at? Or
I don't know if those are publicly traded companies, so, but I haven't seen any articles about them losing all their fucking.
Is there a way you can see their profits every year? Or?
I don't know, not unless they're publicly traded.
What the fuck? Oh well. It would just be very funny to see it all go, the bar going up in the inflation crisis.
Do you think
Last year, more Americans traveled than ever before.
Whoa, that's a good one. Traveling to different places so they can find work.
But also keep in mind that like when you're far leftist online, you can't take credit for anything as well, because then you, again, these dipshits will say, oh, you're out of touch, or you have to be shitting on billionaires and saying how horrible the economy is and how horrible everything is. So then even the establishment that you're a part of can't take credit for anything good happening, because you can't give credit, because then you sound like you're saying that,
but if you're in the far left, it's easier to redirect. You just have to say, oh yeah, all those concerns are real. It's just the billionaire class that's doing it instead of whatever, illegal migrants.
Oh, DoorDash is publicly traded.
And they're doing quite well in a time when people are...
So DoorDash went from $85 a share to $170 a share in 1 year. Okay, DoorDash is doing pretty well.
My theory is getting vindicated a little bit. Pre-COVID doesn't... Well, actually...
Oh, their IPO was in 2020 during COVID stuff. Oh, so their peak was during COVID, yeah.
But no, surely this fucking trajectory from 2023 up to 24 is a sign that things are improving, right? Like, well, Uber Eats.
I don't like Statista because I don't know if I trust the satellite.
They never give any fucking information. It drives me crazy. I'm gonna sound like a hippie. I'm just worried about the health of our nation. But I really am, because it just seems like the future, the way that things are geared, especially with social media and the internet and all that stuff, is that people are gonna forever feel bad about the way that things are, because even if things are good, the whole media landscape and what people kind of make money off of, or how they get you to vote for somebody else, is all based essentially like on negative emotion, it seems like. And
I mean, you got to fight it. Then you have to fight for it. I mean, that's all you can do. You have to.
But because if you're just positive about it, you're dismissing their reality. If you feed into their reality but redirect it into somewhere else, being like, yes, and the billionaires are the reason why, you're still stuck in this position of feeling awful. Like, there's no... I don't say there's no way out. There has to be a way out. But the way that things just currently are structured is that, I don't say people want to stay miserable, but somewhat. Like,
it's fun to have something to fight against. That's why having enemies to unify around. That's why we went to the moon, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's nice to have that thing to fight against for sure. But I don't think that we have to be like fully doomed. I think that it's possible to message better, but you have to balance out like positivity and negativity. And people just have a really hard time doing that in a way that sounds like cool to a lot of different people, because a lot of people just don't step outside of their own circles a lot.
Like, there were lots of times when sometimes you need even more negativity, because in terms of like, Tim Walz did not get nearly angry enough with JD Vance for dodging those questions on January 6th, the way he was doing it.
Sure.
Like, the call out just wasn't there. He looked kind of meek about it. Like, it didn't matter that much. But I guess the issue isn't just like directing anger. It's also that I feel like Kamala just seemed so afraid of her own shadow when it came to every issue. Like, there's the party talking point for this, and we stick to it religiously. If there's a question we don't like, we just kind of find a way to dodge it, and that's it. Like, it's so limited. And it felt like it was quite hard to see exactly what Democrats were advocating for, because it's hard to say things are going well, let's just keep doing more of the same.
Yeah, Kamala should have been more human. She needed to be a bit more human in her conversations. Like, she definitely came off stiff, because there are conversations I've seen, or things where she was a person. I'm like, oh, yeah.
It was suddenly when she was being confronted, right? Like, she was funny enough, when she was talking to Trump, she felt human, like laughing at him and shit.
A little more, yeah.
When it was just the questions about whether or not you changed your mind on this or that, and it just seemed really fucking awkward. Or with Gaza, obviously she could only.
Yeah, although I will say,
point,
and part of this is the liberal media fault as well. It sucks because on the liberal media, like you know that you're being hardcore analyzed, and every statement you're making is being gone over with a fine-tooth fucking comb. Meanwhile, Donald Trump like sounds like an actual buffoon when he's in front of all these panels, and he's shameless. Trump will go from interview to interview to the. I watched that full Bloomberg thing where he does that talk in front of the economic forum.
2,000% tariffs or some shit. Yeah.
It's actually like hilarious. It's probably one of the dumbest conversations I've ever heard in my entire life. And I actually went in there thinking that because people were saying like, well, that was a brutal interview. The guy was brutal. He wasn't brutal. I would have actually critiqued that guy still just as hard as anybody else. But like, you let Trump escape from almost everything. You're insane. Yeah, Trump, but he's not. There's zero accountability. But again, it's because the conservative media is wholly 100% united around the party and around Trump as a candidate. So they won't ever attack him, right? Remember, Biden had a really bad debate performance and got ejected from his incumbency. Yep. Donald Trump lost his election and was still worshipped as a fucking god, and then they re-ran him, right? So all these same people that are like, oh, you need to self-reflect, you need to analyze what went wrong. What did you guys do when Trump lost? Oh, well, that's different because it was the deep state that rigged everything. So we're just going to run the exact same candidate again and hope that this time enough good Americans fight against the riggedness. Like, it's actually delusional, right? So.
I think the whole strategy of like trying to cozy up to moderates, I don't think really worked well in her favor. I think moderatism for a large part is dead. I think people just consider themselves like independent. I just want to know your thoughts on this as well. I feel like during Biden and during Kamala's campaigns, I understood the inclination, but I just didn't agree with it, that they kept trying to pivot to this idea of rebuilding the Republican Party somewhat, of like, oh no, like some level of reformation there, or of like, oh, we'll get all the good ones, all the ones that aren't.
I don't think that was ever a big part of the campaign. I think Bernie sycophants and fucking lefty dick sucks tried to like obsess over that, but I don't think that was like a huge part of their campaign. They were just really mad that Cheney and everything endorsed him. I think the reason, part of the messaging for saying that like, well, there's like another Republican Party that could be built, is the issue is that Republicans have no off-ramp from the Trump cult. Because as soon as they off-ramp a little bit, they're called rhinos, and then their careers are eviscerated and they're completely destroyed. That's why everybody has to fall in line and worship Trump as a god emperor, and you can't be against that in any way, size, shape, or form. So you have to have like some, because even Biden, when he gave his speech saying, you know, not all MAGA Republicans, even Lex Friedman quoted that to me. He's like, look, he's attacking every single Republican. I was like, no, he's not. So I mean, they paid a little bit of lip service, but I don't think the whole campaign was built around appealing to Republicans at all. I don't think I necessarily.
I don't think it was built. It might have been a small part of the campaign, but it spoke quite loud. How normal is it for Democrats to say, I'm going to have a Republican in my cabinet? Is that normal?
Well, because the issue is that Democrats are always trying to like come to the center and appease, but not like in moderating their positions, but just like in governing, right? And I mean, in some ways you can criticize it, but in other ways, like, I mean, it worked. Like Biden passed a ton of legislation. Biden got a ton of people together to pass bills that he never would have before. So
yeah, it worked for passing legislation, but I think for an election campaign, it obviously did just mean that like that stiffness definitely came from there, right? Like not wanting to anger the. Like,
oh yeah, maybe, and there is value in turning out your best, right? In turning out your base. Like people got mad at me over the exploding fireman dude, but like I think that like as much as people get mad about it, like there's value in shitting on the other side like that. That's why the Trumpers do it all the time, and that's why that they get mad when the other people do it, because it feels bad and it makes them upset and they don't like that. But then people on the left will go, oh, you're right, we shouldn't make fun of you, and they're like, that's right, you commie Marxist fascists, stop calling us names, right? Like it's like the fuck that, this is retarded.
Piers Morgan tried to say he was young because he was trying to be more emotional about it. He's like a young fireman. The guy was like 50 years old.
Stupid.
Fucking Piers Morgan, man.
At least from what I saw, and maybe that's just in my own little bias bubble, when Kamala was first campaigning, I think they were doing like a great job. Tim Walz calling the Republicans weird, them like kind of like making fun of them, clowning. And then it seemed like there was a shift somewhere with trying to appease more to the moderates, and then like, oh, look, like campaigning with the Dick
What's
Cheney.
a single thing that she did to like appease the moderates?
Or just campaigning on it, right? So the whole Republican on a cabinet.
Yeah, but I don't think that's appeasing them. That's just like a governing thing.
No,
right?
no,
like,
but it was this whole idea that there was this shift from before of like, these guys are clowns, to like, oh, like I keep using Dick Cheney because that's the most like obvious example. But even I don't think it was a bad idea to have like a Republican or two in the DNC. I'm not disagreeing with that. But it just seemed like there was this shift in behavior from like, we're going to clown on these people as much as possible, to like, oh, we're gonna reel it back a little bit and show that we're like friendly with like these moderates.
I don't think they reeled it back. I think, like Donald Trump did the same thing, right? They say that like, oh no, look, we're friends with leftists too. That's why we have RFK here. That's why we have Tulsi Gabbard here. That's like, so I mean, like they do the thing too where they pretend that they're repealing. And look at how often like he dick sucks on Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders got cheated out of his election, and that's why So I mean, I think they kind of do.
They've been doing that since the Russians. That was part of the Russian.
I don't think that whole. Yeah, I don't think that has much to do with the playing into like appealing to the moderates or anything like that. I just don't know if that was a big influence. At the
immigration thing. I think everyone seems to say that they went way right on immigration. The Democrats
went way right. Well, the immigration thing, I don't even know what the correct messaging is on that. The problem is that like nobody has any idea about anything even related to immigration. I guess like the problems with immigration and the asylum stuff. But again, that's because. I don't think immigration is a huge issue that any American cares about. I think that's a manufactured issue. Because again, and I've said this a million times, if the immigration thing was a really big deal, people would have been mad that nothing happened with the immigration bill instead of clapping and cheering when it was canceled and nothing was put in its place. So that's a fake issue. Any Republican that tells you that illegal immigration is a huge issue, they're lying to you. Or they're not lying, more realistically, they're emoting something. They're giving you an emotion that they're getting that was given to them by another conservative talking head.
Yeah, I know. I've watched some of their media on immigration. Like it is literally just some fucking cowboy goes to the border and sees a few fucking brown people running around and then just says there's a huge problem. Yeah, that's what it's just like a total vibe. It's what they do. It's what they did in the UK with all the fucking immigration communities. This is a no-go zone. You can't go here. So we're going to go here and we're going to film it. And it's just a few people in fucking burqas walking around in a mostly still like at least 50+% white area anyway.
Yeah. Although we did have we had some no-go zones in the United States. And it was ex-special forces people that were trying to scare FEMA away from helping people in North Carolina.
Yeah. Man, that's fucking mental.
There was an interesting article, I don't know how true I would say it is, but talking about how like, gay rights came to be so quickly compared to other civil rights movements. Have you ever
Did it come to be quickly?
How basically between like 1990s to like 2000s, there was like a strong push towards getting like gay rights, especially in the sense of marriage.
Yeah, but gay people have been fighting for shit for a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, for a long time. But the article was making the argument that basically the reason why you saw such a like surge and why it happened, I don't say relatively quickly because you're right, they've been fighting for a long time, but from when they started to be, I guess, like more vocal towards media and everything, they said a large part of it was because people have more experience day to day with gay people than they do with like a random immigrant, let's say, or with another minority. Again, I don't know how true this article is.
There's got to be more minorities and immigrants in the U.S. that people interact with than gay people. I don't think gay people are that much of the population.
I think the argument, again, not my argument, the article that the article is making was that the way, I don't think this sounds weird, the way that gayness happens or the way that gay people are dispersed or whatever is that chances are a person has something within like their family or a school member or a more direct line than with like, let's say if you're an all white community, like having in contact with like a black person. I know that's like a lot different now because the US is a lot more like multicultural than it was before.
There might be like a degree of truth to that maybe, but I guess like like gay rights have been a thing. The Stonewall riots were in like the 60s,
yeah,
right?
No,
and then there was all like the AIDS from grids and everything else. Like, I mean, there might be.
I kind of want to find the article now. So
yeah, and also you're also comparing different types of rights because like immigrants could get married.
Yeah, that's true.
And gay people, like they're not fighting for the same things even. So
yeah,
I don't know. I'd have to see that. I do agree that like having direct interactions with people is important. Like that's like that. It definitely favorably colors your view of them.
Because I was gonna say, I think the reason why Republicans always want to focus on like immigrants or even like trans people is because I think the interactions that people have with those types of people are a lot rarer in their day-to-day life. So it's a lot easier to demonize and to basically make them seem like a big, scary boogeyman.
That is true. I don't know how much it impacts it, though. It's hard to measure, I guess, because apparently online is the real world now. The thing that sucks is that the far left will amplify the fuck out of the craziest, like, trans whatever people online, too, which hurts and sucks. I think it damages the movement. I don't think anything has been more damaging to trans people than FTM's or MTF's, the online community of them. They're just insane. Yeah, your AMABs.
They haven't come up in the discourse that much recently, have they?
No, not
maybe
recently.
right-wingers
No.
are talking about it in their own spaces a lot. But
I would say probably a couple years ago, maybe it was a bigger deal. But then like they brought up the boxing thing recently. But that should be a thing. I feel that you could very easily just like disown. Like if somebody brings up, they're like, "Do you think that like these women should be?" I was like, "No, probably not." And you just like walk away from it. You don't have to fight with it ever. And then it just makes. I feel like it would make the right look a little bit more unhinged. But yeah. With
the trans sports thing, you mean?
Yeah, that should have been an easy thing to walk away from. It's like it's an obviously ridiculous point. Yeah, I don't know, but
oh god, people were saying that didn't Pierce try to say that the Imane Khalif thing was vindicated, that she actually was intersex, but then
I don't know if anything solid's come out about
it's
that.
It's a Daily Mail article that says an unverified report from some it was called the Kremlin something Institute in Paris.
My dad sent me that.
Yeah. Again, even the fucking Daily Mail article says like twice it's not been verified. Yeah, it's dumb. Fuck, man, I could not believe that story.
And this is also another thing that's been playing in my head. Especially when it comes to like young men online. There is this narrative that leftists hate men, that they hate white men. And I know some people, like in the far left or whatever, can say stuff like that. But when it comes to, I kind of want to say reality, like I'm trying to think about mainstream figures in the left who have made those claims. And I really cannot think of any. Maybe I'm just trapped in my own bubble.
The left online media sphere, absolutely.
No, but I'm saying mainstream, because I've seen
people don't
before.
engage with people in in all the real world who say these things. They just look at like the crazy shit on Twitter and TikTok and.
Yeah, but then that's the thing, right? I think it's a lot easier to be like, hey, Republicans believe these extreme things because they have their main figures actually repeating those extreme things. But then when it comes to leftists, people are like, oh, look at these like tweets that got a lot of traction. The left hates men. And it's like, it doesn't matter how many mainstream figures there are, or even not mainstream.
Yeah, because this is one of the things I said before, is that the right is always coalesced around the party. So there's like a top-down congruence. Whereas on the left, the mainstream, or not the mainstream, but like the media sphere on the left, especially online, is not in congruence with the party. So because this is like, I've attacked peers on this. Like every time you talk about these things, you're just talking about people on Twitter, and that's always who they go to. Like you can't find Democratic politicians or like lawmakers or the president saying this. It's just like people on Twitter. But those are the voices of the left online.
But then the problem is like even those people on Twitter, they're not like they're not, at least from what I've seen, most of them are not content creators, or they're not content creators that have like a
the content creators and the platforms probably like a really great example, not to be too personal or whatever, but like the Hassan doing the cracker stuff. Like the idea that it's okay to say like racial slurs against white people on Twitter and it's not or on Twitch and it's not a big deal and it's just a joke, lol. But if you like even culturally appropriate an Asian person's dress, it's like the end of the world. Like that's an example that on its face, that's such a loser of a fucking argument. Or all the people who are like, well, you actually can't be racist towards white people at all. Like as soon as you've done that, like 50% of people have completely tuned out anything you're going to say. And these are like mainstream leftist arguments. When you were getting to the point to where there was a professor, I don't remember what the speech was, but I think they were talking about shooting or killing white people. It was just an unhinged speech. And it's, the academic people, it's just not good. It's not good. It's not acceptable. And it doesn't translate to the lawmakers. I remind people this all the time. Like people in Congress aren't like this. Our leaders are not like this. But the media sphere is absolutely like this. And it's rough. Like, it's rough.
I can't think of anyone in like any Democrat in Congress who said anything out of pocket about trans people ever.
It's not even close. It's insane. But how many people in the Republican side were fucking QAnoners?
Yeah.
What's the Marjorie Taylor Greene of the left? Rashid Tlaib,
Jewish
AOC, like it's not even close. You have nothing even remotely close to that.
People try to call Tlaib a fucking terrorist and shit. I don't know what the fuck she said either. Like I don't
stuff over, I think, some other. But like even her statements are nowhere near as close to as just insane.
It's nothing.
Not even that I agree or disagree, but like Marjorie Taylor Greene believes in Jewish space lasers. She still believes in Jewish space lasers right now. You don't have any equivalents to that on the left. There's just nothing even remotely equivalent. But people look at in the media spheres, people just say what's in your big media spheres, and that's what they. That's what they go
people in your chat keep saying that Tlaib has said some wild shit.
She has said some dumb shit on. She's a little nuts around Israel.
I remember Ilhan Omar with the fucking all about the Benjamins, where Israel's hypnotized the nation.
Yeah,
that was
sure.
a while ago.
Which, listen, you're Muslim, you say some crazy shit. But I'm just saying that none of that is comparable to QAnon.
It's not, yeah.
None of it is comparable to QAnon. I think the Palestinian shit and the super crazy like even the supporting Hezbollah and all that, I think is crazy. None of that is close to QAnon. The QAnon shit is Hillary Clinton and Podesta, have ritual satanic sacrifices of children in their basement and eat them for energy. Like, it's not even on the same world.
And also the tolerance. Like, how many fucking sex offenders in the Republican
Yeah.
Party, and they just stay there.
I mean, they openly support people like Andrew Tate. Could you imagine that person on the left?
When I see a bunch of like these young men that, you know, when you ask them about their beliefs in women or whatever, or why they voted Trump, again, and this is all online or whatever, but if you go to like Gen Z on Reddit, there's a bunch of guys being like, oh, you know, basically I voted for Trump because the Democratic Party doesn't care about me. It's like, does Trump care about you? But then second of all, it's also, okay, how do you convince these people that the Democrats care about you when all the information they get about the Democratic Party is essentially from their right-wing pundits that they listen to?
I mean, the messaging has been all negative on the left for a long time from the media sphere. There's one of the things I said a long time ago when I talked about how like the reason why Andrew Tate and Ben Shapiro and Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson are probably the two biggest like cult daddies on the right is because people on the left say we don't talk to men, we don't talk to white people, we hate these people, kill all men, LOL. Like that was it. So I mean, like naturally people are going to gravitate more to other things. So now we're probably starting to see like the results of that years and years of indoctrination from the culty like Jordan Petersons and the culty Andrew Tates is basically what that's rolled out as.
I remember in like 2017, I had a couple of like childhood friends who had fallen into the Jordan Peterson kind of like pipeline. They were big fans of him. And I feel like with him back then, most of what he did was negative as well. It was all about how they're censoring free speech and like C-16 and all that shit. But I think they tried to show me an episode of Peterson that they really liked. And it wasn't him rambling about anything that's wrong with the world or anything. It was him and like Shapiro and Rubin just talking about like Plato and shit, like just having a really stupid like pseudo-intellectual bullshit conversation about philosophy.
Sure.
I think the appeal was that listening to people like that made them feel smart, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that, but it's just the fact that they're willing to talk to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's literally the right, as much as they make fun of it, they've like created like a safe space to do gender studies for men. Like that's essentially what a lot of these spaces are, is that like you can come in here and you can have grievances about like women and how hard it is to be a boy, and we're going to just talk about things with like no judgment and make you feel like empowered and cool and all of that. And on the left, when you go over there, it's like, well, you're a man, you've had all the power, you're white, you've enslaved people, kill yourself, fuck you, like, and that's it. And it's like, great, well, fuck, I'm gonna go listen to all.
I remember like as a teenager, I used to like that about people like Zizek and all that. It was just like these kind of like these like sort of like whatever like soy intellectual like circle jerks. But it was just people like agreeing on everything, but just talking about like lofty shit. But I don't know, like, do you feel like you need to do more of that? Like,
no, I mean, you just need to be willing to like talk to people. I don't think you have to be like a pseudo-intellectual. I think
not like a pseudo-intellectual, but just like
you just have to talk about issues that are like relevant to them.
Occasionally, you've got your little music segments where you talk about that kind of stuff. But,
sure, but no, you have to talk about issues that are relevant to them in a way that you like. People can tell when you're coming from a place of compassion versus when you're coming from a place of judgment. Yeah. Even if you're saying the exact same thing, like people can tell. Yeah, and that like generally when the left talks to like white men, or in the past, I think it's gotten a bit better over the last like year, but like in the past, it definitely feels like it comes from a place of condescension and derision every time there's a conversation about it. Whereas on the right, even when they say they're saying rough things or hard truths, it always comes from, it feels like it's coming from a very compassionate place, even if they're being mean. Like, you're a fucking loser, but that's because you haven't taken control of your life and you need to do the things you do to empower yourself and blah, blah, blah. Even when they're being quote unquote mean, they're being empowering because it feels like it's coming from a place like, I know you can do better and all this. Yeah.
I don't know. Because I feel like all the advice, or not all, I won't say 99% of the advice they give is self-destructive to some degree, or is trying to lead the person to essentially like stay stuck in this cycle.
Yeah, but that applies perfectly to what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying it doesn't matter what you say. It just matters that it feels like it's coming off as compassionate. As long as it feels that way, then
wait, but how much have Republicans in this campaign scolded women and still managed to get a pretty decent amount of women to vote for them?
Scolded women on what?
JD Vance with the fucking cat ladies, or for one. He's a vice president candidate. Not to mention Trump, I guess, like rape.
I don't think that comes off as scolding women. I think that came off as attacking women who were non-traditional. Cat lady is a dog whistle for 30-year-old millennial woman who doesn't want to get married and have kids. So that's a totally fine demographic for them to attack.
So scolding your enemies is fine, but just
of course,
not
there's a huge
fans,
attacking enemies is important. It's super important. You always attack the outgroup. Yeah, that's a obvious. Yeah.
But I feel like left wingers, I guess, are not as good at being like reeling in prospective fans or prospective like.
They are, but they just don't.
supporters.
They're just not oriented towards a party. they can bring in fans and they can attack outgroups, but like the Democratic Party is their outgroup. That's an issue, right? That's why you have people like Hassan and Kyle Kalinske and all these other people. And Kalinske apparently doesn't do this sometimes, but they'll say, oh yeah, both parties are the same. Doesn't matter who you vote for, it's the same.
We'll tell you the Democrat achievements every now and then.
Yeah, Kalinske does better, but like it's hard when you harp on that genocide shit so much to be like, okay, but also vote for them. Like, Jesus Christ, that's a really difficult proposition, my dude. That's the only thing I'm critical on Kalinske for. But
there were those raids in the West Bank, I think. Kyle Kalinski's whole thing was like, there's no Hamas in the West Bank. They're not there. And like, bro, like everyone who died was Hamas. Like even Hamas said that.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know. I feel like every time I try to talk to, I don't say all young guys or whatever, but when it comes to like the online sphere, I feel like so many of them automatically are just like, no, you're a woman, you'll never understand how I feel. So then
that's because the way that women talk about things online is legitimately some of the most retarded fucking shit I've ever seen in my entire life. Okay. As painful as it is when you hear a guy talk about your body when it comes to abortion, like I talked to some dude on some fucking Twitter space, he's like, oh, women know when they're pregnant in 2 weeks or whatever, and it was like the most retarded shit ever. Jesus. Like when women talk about men's issues, it is also the most retarded shit ever. Women and men are equally fucking retarded when it comes to understanding any issues that men or women face. It's insane.
What do you think women can do better when it comes to talking about men's issues? Because I feel like when I talk about it, at least I'm like, no, you shouldn't feel this way, blah, blah, blah. Or at least I try not to be. I don't know. What do you tell me?
I would have to see the particular issue and statements. I'm not sure. Somebody in chat said Michael Brooks was really good at not woke scolding. I actually agree a lot. I think Brooks, and I would say Sam Cedar too. I think both those guys. Brooks, I think, was really good at coming off as kind of, and he was socialist, right? Mm-hmm. He wasn't even just, like, Brooks was good at like, yeah. But also, I think that even trying to think, even does Hassan come off as woke scoldy? I don't think Hassan comes off as. A lot of the socialist types will not usually do a lot of the idpol, the identity politics stuff. The woke scolding stuff usually came from like progressives. But like once you get to like the tanky sphere and you're in like the socialist like communist world, usually those guys will say things like, "Oh, we don't do identity politics, or you're wasting your time on this, or whatever. We're more concerned about like the class stuff."
Well, they have to now because they're so tolerant of like fucking gay murderers.
Yeah,
like
a little bit. Yeah. Although they'll go back and forth on it. Like I've seen times where I'm watching Hassan stream and somebody brings up like black issues or some shit, and he's like, we shouldn't talk about this. Identity politics is like what liberals obsess over. But then there are other times where Hassan is like obsessed with identity politics. Like people hate me because I'm Muslim or Middle Eastern.
It's the shape shifting.
Yeah, it just depends. Yeah, you have to ask him. Are you white today, or are you a Middle Eastern Turkish boy? Like I need to know like what version of politics we're getting today. Yeah.
So how do you think women should talk to disgruntled men in a way that isn't being? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. The way at least I try to do it is like, I think a lot of them are just coming from places like being like lonely and hurt and angry for reasons that I think are kind of valid or really valid. I think women growing up have somewhat of a better emotional safety net than men do. I think that I hate when people are like, oh, men shouldn't cry because they're men. Like, I think that stuff is super fucking dumb. But it feels like sometimes when I try to talk about like, no, I think it's okay for guys to have emotions and to talk about them and that they shouldn't be belittled about it. And if somebody does belittle you, if you find a girl or something or even friends that are going to disown you for being a fucking human, like, fuck them. Like they're not very good friends then. And you probably shouldn't want to be with them. I feel like whenever I talk about stuff like that, people are like, "Oh, what do you know? You're just a girl. You've had it easy."
I think I think part of that, again, I would have to see. It's hard without seeing particular conversations or particular things, but like I think part of the issue is that you have this this dichotomy of masculine traits versus feminine traits, and it seems like when people on the feminist, I will say women want to talk about men, the only things that they'll talk about encouraging are like the feminine things. So like what you just said about like showing your emotions and all of that, that's more of like a feminine coded conversation. So I think for somebody, especially that's already on the right, it already feels a little bit condescending, or it feels like an outsider is already talking to me in terms of that, I think would be the feeling that a guy would have.
Yeah, I just think, but that's, I guess, also the other problem, because I think a lot of people assume like, oh, I'm a woman, I've had an easy mode when it comes to emotions and stuff. And it's like, I don't think I've had an easy mode. But I don't know if I want to start talking about that because that's going to get me emotional.
Because the problem is that people have a much different, it's because there are things that the genders deal with that neither gender has any understanding of, and the microsecond they try to talk about it, people lose their minds on it, and it almost makes you think it just shouldn't happen at all. Like, a guy will never understand what it feels like to be a woman in the presence of a man. There's just a feeling of being in an area, being in a room, a guy comes in, and just everything is just changed differently. Everything is just different just because of that dynamic. Everything changes, and that's just, for a lot of guys, you just don't understand. It seems stupid as fuck. You don't understand it all. You don't care. And a lot of women will never understand like how difficult it can be for a guy to approach a girl, or what it's like to not receive any attention from anybody ever. Like, women just have no concept of what that's like. I've talked to so many women that talk about the difficulties in Tinder or in dating or whatever, and like, yeah, like I have 500 guys that I've matched with, and like I don't even know who I want to talk, or like, and and I'm not saying that like they don't deserve to complain about it. I'm just saying that it's a worlds apart of experience, and when both sides try to connect with the other, they connect in ways that make them look even more not in touch. So like, a woman will talk about, a guy will be like, fuck, like I can't. A great example of this, no shade to her, but I almost turned into an incel listening to Kidology talking about dating. Okay, who's an insanely fucking hot, attractive, smart, funny, whatever woman is like, yeah, I can't find any guys. Like, I would kill myself if I was an incel watching her, right? Yeah. And then guys will say shit about how like, like, oh well, as a guy, like, I can feel scared around like some men as well, or like we have blah blah blah. And it's like, you have no idea. It's a totally different thing. Or like, oh, like we could get baby trapped by women, and it's like, this is like not even remotely, like, how often does this actually happen? Like, this is an insane or we're gonna get like. Everybody just they when they try to communicate with the other side, they bring up the things that they care about, which is usually exactly what the other side doesn't care about. So men will go up to women and they'll say things like, how could you possibly complain about not finding a romantic partner? You can f 400 people right now. Yeah. And the women don't care about being able to people. They want to find a good romantic partner. So then they'll look at the guys and they'll be like, how can you complain about not being able to find a romantic partner when you guys are literally the ones that decide after you fuck somebody if you want to date them or not, right? Like, you can be a fuck boy. There are no fuck girls, right? Those are just girls you party with. So like, everybody, when they try to connect with the other side, they only focus on the issues they care about, and then just fuck the genders, fuck women and fuck men. That's why we should all just be non-binary. Boom.
Yeah. I think
hormone it up.
Bisexual women, especially ones who have spent most of their lives dating men, but then they try to start dating women, I feel like they are quite close to understanding.
They can get there, but I've
had bisexual friends who are like talking about maybe if they're earlier mid-20s and they're trying to approach women for the first time, or deal with like women like issues in dating, or even on dating apps. And some of the complaints that I'm like reading in these conversations, I'm like, this is like how every guy, this is the inner monologue of every guy 1 year before he becomes an incel. It's like, oh, like, yeah. So I feel like that's a good way in. I don't know why no one's done that, and no one's. I don't think people have commented on that. I don't know how to talk to lonely men because I'm Sigma. Like, I don't care, but there needs to be more bisexual women who are talking about how difficult it is to date women. To men.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's a lot of people just need to be not soy.
I don't know if that like.
As long as people are just less soy, and there's better content creators on the left, you can have conversations like this, and it's
Because for a while there was what you call like the Dirtbag Left and shit, but that for ages that was Sam Cedar, and now he'll have a caller and he disagrees with him, and they'll just spend 10 minutes like interrupting them and setting an example of them, hanging up, and then apologizing to the audience for platforming such hateful opinions.
Yeah, and then also the Dirtbag Left started to be like directed at just like white people and men. I was like, okay, well, I guess.
Which is not really.
Yeah. Or sometimes you'll get sometimes it's just not good. I don't want to throw him under the bus because he might possibly be working on the early construction of a bridge back towards me, but like Vosh's comments about that girl with the leggings, that was fucking wild. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
That came from a dark place.
That was like, I don't know if I would have made comments like that was like, bro.
He was in a fucking wife beater when he said it as well.
Yeah, I'm like, bro, Jesus Christ.
I feel like Vosh would just be such a good social democrat. I thought this when I was canvassing.
Yeah, like, he's destiny coded. He's edgy, he's funny, he's smart, but
he's got the wonderful, the low, smooth radio voice, the charm.
Yeah, he does all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But now he literally quit debates completely because he was too afraid of debating.
I just feel like I thought he would have been like the best the best like social democrat canvasser doing those conversations. He could have been the best or the worst, because he could either turn on the charm with the fucking like the voice and everything and the rhetoric, or it would have just been, ma'am, we are on the precipice of an impending genocide against 3 minorities and in the Weimar Republic, and then he'll just tell you something that didn't actually happen in the Weimar Republic.
Yeah.
And Fat Ian will always have a place in my heart. There's always a chance. Have you considered that?
Doing.
You said there's a potential Vosh bridge.
Oh no, yeah, we talked about this earlier. I said he would have to do a full concession, or he would just have to say, he would have to acknowledge all the times he's deliberately lied about me. Everything I wrote in my manifesto about him.
He just has to be like,
yeah. I lied. Yeah, I said this shit because I fucking hated him. And I just wanted. Yeah, I just wanted my audience to fucking hate him, and I poisoned the well like crazy.
Shit.
And I'd be like, okay, we're cool.
How did things get so bad between you guys?
My theory is biased towards me, but I was generally pretty decent at winning arguments on a logical level, but I would almost always lose rhetorically because I just wasn't very rhetorically minded ever. I don't care. I'll bite any bullet or whatever. I don't give a fuck. But I think I had 1 or 2 arguments against Vosh where I tried to be a little bit more optically oriented, and we had 1 or 2. And I think after losing those rhetorically, I think Vosh was like, F this, I'm never talking to this guy again. Was it after Rittenhouse? I thought we had 1 more after Rittenhouse. I don't remember what it was. But Rittenhouse was 1, but a second one was living your principles. The idea that like you should live the hardest capitalist life you can, even if you're a socialist. And I think he ended up looking bad to his audience on that one. That was a big one. And he was like, after that, we just like, he didn't want to talk to me anymore.
Did this happen around the same time that you were fighting with all of his friends, like the Does and the Demon Mamas? Was that?
Maybe.
Where was that in the time?
The fascism one for Bush v. Gore was one as well. Yeah.
I didn't pay much attention to that at the time, but I would, without knowing that much at all, I would bet that it was just audience pressure.
Might have been a little bit, but I think he was okay at resisting that before. But
yeah, but I think Vosh wanted to be like a full-on like a left, like a socialist voice.
Yeah, he wanted to be included.
Close to you in that that's not allowed. That's illegal.
Yeah, but he's also he's a little bit too edgy for those people too.
He has just built his entire own little world. Like
yes,
it's his own ideology as well. Like the pro-Ukraine, like hyper-left, like Israel's doing a genocide, also like very pro-Biden. Like, yeah, it's Voshism.
Yeah,
and I think he does like theory on gender that no one else has.
He does decently with live streaming, right? Doesn't he get like 5,000 to 10,000 CCV still when he streams?
Yeah, he's just really easy to listen to. Yeah. No, wait, hey. Hey! Okay, volume. Fuck me. Bro, he got fucking destroyed. It was like less than 24 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Poor guy. And he had a perfectly logical reason. He wanted to protect his gun rights.
Yeah, not acceptable. The culty messages that people were writing, like, listen, man, like, I think you're just misguided. Like, we need to talk privately about this. Like, it was so fucking creepy and weird. Oh my God.
You think that's how the Democratic Party should be?
Hell yeah, we need that. We absolutely need that. Yes.
That's
like, I don't know about supporting Kamala. Oh, okay. We need to talk, man.
Yeah, that's
what's going on here.
That's how people should treat Hassan and Mike Pompeo.
Exactly.
Like, listen,
Here I have opinions which I admit they're not based in deep knowledge, but I think they're based on some
God, why didn't you say that every time?
understanding. And I think what's being said about Trump is completely ridiculous. He doesn't represent a fascist threat, a Hitler. This is all really stupid. It's extremely unpatriotic. You know why? Why it's unpatriotic? Because it suggests that our institutions are so weak. If the executive gets carried away, the judiciary or the legislative step in, okay? So, our system has been around for a very long time, okay?
So was Rome.
And the institutions in our system are deeply entrenched. So, you're telling me our system is so fragile, our system is so vulnerable that one single individual can shatter overnight
Sounds like
the
Jordan
checks
Peterson.
and balances which from grade school?
I don't know how much you know about this guy, but he is just the Jordan Peterson of the left. Like, completely, yeah.
We've been taught, and I think it's...
But people like him aren't actually that, they're not actually that left-wing. All the groups they support in the Middle East are like the farthest right groups. Fuck. I'm trying to think of another...
Again, when they're illiberal, they're not really like left-wing, right-wing.
Yeah.
It's just like supporting anti-liberal establishment versus liberal establishments, right?
We've been taught, and I think it's correct, have been entrenched in our system. That doesn't sound very plausible to me. It's also very unpatriotic. Do you think that they would allow a Donald Trump to take a sledgehammer to the system? I don't think that would happen. If he attempts to do certain things, I think, certain things which are not just pro-business, but which threaten the whole system that checks and balances the Constitution, which threatens the whole system. Would they give him a green light? No. Because they like the system. The system works as far as they're concerned.
Who the fuck is they that he's talking about there?
The Supreme Court justice, maybe? I don't know. What a smart guy. Okay.
It's just a long way of saying he is, but he'll fail.
He doesn't know anything about American politics or any politics. Man. I hate this guy.
Yeah.